Hey, hi, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Klutbane and I'm the Boone County Hospital Foundation Director. We are so pleased today to have Don Miglino. I even practiced it earlier. Miglino with us with Anatomy IT. We're talking about Cybersecurity 101. Couple of things quick before I hand it over to her. First of all, as of right now, we do not have a program scheduled for July, but that could change, so stay tuned. As always, watch all the normal ways that we participate in our advertising, so social media, email, newspaper, all those things. And I do know that August we have Schrader Reimer's Memorial doing some programming around, I believe, planning your funeral and will and all that fun stuff that we all have to think about at some point. So good to tune in for that as well. And I want to go back to really quick again before I hand it over to Don and just say that this idea for Cybersecurity 101 was brought to me by an employee, and I'm really pleased to be able to provide this to our community. And however far-reaching this goes, I think that this is a really important topic, and we were just talking about this before we started recording, because this does affect our health in a variety of ways. It can affect our financial health, our mental health. There's just a number of ways that really, being out in technology land can really impact us. And we just need to be really savvy and smart when we go out there. And I think that as an employee of a hospital, I'm trained on this all the time and it's in front of me. But I think that that's something that not necessarily is true out in our community for the common person. So I am just really pleased and really grateful that Dawn is here with us today to share her knowledge and wisdom. And I'll pass it over to you to go ahead and get started and share a little bit more about yourself as well, please.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for having me today. Cybersecurity 101, super, super important. We talk about it, we read about it, we read about the hacking and the ransomware attacks, yet we continue to do the same things over and over and over again. I am Anatomy IT's HIPAA compliance specialist. I'm sure you're all very familiar with HIPAA. If in fact it's not part of your working world, it would be anytime you go to the doctor's office where they hand you the notice of privacy practices or they talk to you about your rights as a patient. So that's what I do in the anatomy realm. I go into organizations, I conduct risk analyses, I explain to them what's good, what's maybe a medium risk, hopefully not high risks, red flags as we call them in my industry. So truly, it's interesting. I was telling Sarah earlier, most people when I meet them, they like me. And then as I'm walking out the door, they're like, I'm so happy she's leaving because she's just uncovered, a can of worms or opened up a can of worms. And now I know all of these risks and these vulnerabilities that I'm up against. So this kind of goes back to exactly what we're going to be discussing today with Cybersecurity 101. I believe Sarah mentioned you can either put questions in the chat. I'm not sure. She can either address them during the course of my presentation or we can go through them at the end of the presentation. So with that being said, I'm going to get going. What we're talking about today is literally how we can do a better job securing our personal information, our personal data. If we work in the medical field or in the financial world, how we secure our clients or our patients vulnerable what's the word I'm looking for? Vulnerable data, basically. So weak passwords. Everybody that I know of at one given point or time is going to use their pet's name, their kid's name, their kid's middle name, part of their address, their home address, or in maybe all of their date of birth. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into organizations and I'm working with them on a computer and I say, oh, hey, happy birthday. It looks like you had a birthday last week. How did you know that? Because it said 0613. Just a hunch, just a guess. What are we giving up when we're doing that? You know, when we're creating a password, of course, we want to make it easy on ourselves. But the bottom line is the more difficult the password, the better the password, the longer the password, and a passphrase is much, much harder to break by a hacker or a ransomware attacker and getting into your system, your personal data, your information, et cetera, et cetera. So again, longer, not D. Maglino 12345 or D. Maglino Riley, my dog's name, 124 Enridge. Again, we don't want to give up that kind of information in a password because ultimately it can be linked to you. Unless there's a password policy for a number of times, you could try a password. So we call this failed login attempts. A hacker can literally brute force your system, whether that's your personal home PC, your laptop, a work computer. If there isn't a number of failed login attempts, 3 failed login attempts, then I lock myself out of my system. I have to reset my password. It's really, really good advice to do this. Because again, if I'm a hacker, I can just sit there forever and ever and ever and keep consistently changing it up until I basically crack your password. The longer, as we said, the longer the password, the better. Passphrases, fantastic. I rather be retired. I want to be at the beach. Some systems and applications will require you to use uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters in the password. I'm sure that you're all very, very familiar with going in and putting together your online banking where you go to put your password in that you use over and over and over again for all of your systems and applications. And it says, that's not good enough. No, got to have more characters, got to have a number, got to have an uppercase. So the longer, the better. Again, if you can do it, misspell the phrase, I rather be at the beach. Again, it's super, super important to make the strongest password you possibly can. And just as an FYI, don't write it down and leave it on a post-it next to your PC. Systems that are outdated, end of life, Windows 7, Windows XP, for those of you in business environments, our 2008 R2 servers, 2012 servers, coming end of life. I believe it's the end of this year. It might be the beginning, Q1 in 2024. But again, these systems and these applications, once the manufacturer says it's end of life, you are receiving no more security measures to these devices. So it's very, very important that you consider what you're using and step up the pace of whatever it is and don't take the chance of using something end of life. They're really, really easy targets for outside threats. I want to talk about phishing emails for a minute. Phishing emails are still the #1 way that hackers and ransomware attackers are getting into systems. They compromise the email account, they get into it, and then they just follow prompts while you're putting in your username and your password for some of your scenarios. So how is this done? It's done by a couple of different things. Phishing attacks will be typically something to this, as I wrote in this scenario. You get an email and it's of an urgent nature. It states that you have to take some steps right away, or else what? Or else you're going to get locked out of your system, or else, you know, they're not going to be using something ridiculous like the sky is falling, but, you know, they're going to say that something is going to happen unless you take these measures. So you don't pay attention to the sender. You don't look at the email address and you don't say, wait a minute, I don't recognize this at all. You don't look at the time that the email came in. Is there anything about this that's already sending up red flags? Absolutely. The sense of urgency, the email address, the person who you don't even know or you don't even recognize. The problem is we as human beings say, oh, okay, I either need to help or okay, I'm going to get locked out of a system that I have to do my job with. Well, so you follow the prompts. You click on the link that's attached. You click on the attachment, and now you have let a malware or a spyware or some kind of a virus into your system. And so then the hackers watch as you type in your username and password, and voila, now they're into your system and your data. Most everyone has an email address these days, and because of our trusting nature and the willingness to help others, it makes us susceptible to manipulative phishing attacks. So email phishing, social engineering, they work. Whenever you receive an email and you say to yourself, I don't really remember asking for that. I'm not sure. When in doubt, contact that organization, your billing company, your banking institution. If you're in a business environment, especially when it comes to healthcare, your EMR software. What if you received an email and it said, you're going to get locked out in 5 minutes from your software? And you have a ton of work to do and get done. Of course, I can't go to my administrator. I'm going to go ahead and just follow the prompts and take care of it. As we said before, typically it's the email or the request is of urgent nature. So they're going to ask for something. I always like to give this scenario. Say I'm out last night and I'm a little tired. I get done with work. I barely make it through work. I go home. I go on my personal email, and Wells Fargo has contacted me because that's where I bank. And Wells Fargo says, Dawn, Chase just got hacked again. Did you know that? So follow these prompts. We've got new bells and whistles that we're going to put on our accounts. And in order for us to do that, you need to log in. I'm tired. I go, okay, it's Wells. Do I look at what time it came in? Do I look for misspelled words in the email? Do I look at the sender's email? Does it come across as legit, or is it, Susie at Wells, and Wells is spelled WELS? Look for these red flags. Again, in the event that you question it, delete it or stop and call and contact the person or organization who has sent you the email. The 2022 report on a cybercrime rates highlights that cyber criminals are sending more emails to more people at a faster rate. So in other words, they're doing these mass mailings, and then they're hitting more people at a time. Remember, when in doubt, delete. If someone needs to get in touch with you, I know this sounds crazy, but if somebody needs to get in touch with you, they'll get in touch with you. But when you question an email, especially if you're in a business environment, contact your IT department. Contact the person or the organization who has supposedly sent you that email. When we talk about physical security when it comes to cybersecurity, there are a lot of areas that we really need to think twice about, such as portable devices, cell phones, laptops. In this day and age, so many of us do so many things on those portable devices, and boy, are they easily lost or stolen. If you have a laptop and you have a current laptop, most systems and applications now come with something called encryption. It needs to, pretty much most of the time, it needs to be enabled, which could be done as you're purchasing your new laptop or your new device from your store, and you ask the person who's selling it to you, how do I do this? Or you need to contact the manufacturer in order to do this. But the bottom line when we talk about encryption, encrypt anything whenever possible. Because what happens with encryption is that gets stolen, that device gets stolen or lost. Everything, once someone gets into your system, everything that you have on that is algorithms. So nobody's getting any of your personal information. Nobody's getting your financials if you're doing your bills and your business online. If you're storing things locally, especially on a workstation or on a cell phone, the way we keep emails, there's so much data and there's so much information. So again, encryption whenever possible. And if the device doesn't come with encryption, typically it's not very expensive to purchase it. For business devices, it's always wise not only to encrypt devices, especially portable devices that are traveling in and out of businesses, but also to put a software solution in that is a wiping solution. So in other words, you're a doctor or you're a physician or you're a nurse practitioner and you're traveling and you do so much on your cell phone and people are sending you texts and people are sending you emails. It's a business device and maybe it's a personal device, but it gets lost. It's going to get hacked and you're going to be in trouble and there's going to be a security incident. And unfortunately, there may ultimately be a breach. When we're talking about physical securities with devices, whether it's in a business or even in your own home, would it be prudent to invest in cable locks? Does the laptop remain stationary in your home office, so to speak? Would it make sense to have something that just, there's a key code lock to it? It's a very, very interesting and a very good practice to do. Does the device have a strong password and a timeout? We call it an auto lock in my world, in the HIPAA world. So in other words, you're doing your financials, you're online, or you do everything, locally. So you have your spreadsheets open. The doorbell rings. You go to the door. Your friend is there visiting. Then you go over and get a cup of coffee. And then before you know it, 45 minutes later, your computer is still wide open. There's no lock policy on it. Whenever you can, auto lock devices. Very, very good policy. Update any operating systems as often as you possibly can. So again, you're going to say to me, well, I just got a pop-up and now I'm scared because you just scared me and I don't know whether I should click on that. Does that mean that I'm missing out on an update? You can contact the manufacturer. You can contact Microsoft, if Microsoft, you can contact your MacBook provider, whomever that may be, but ensure that you are keeping your systems current. End-of-life systems, as we discussed earlier, are very, very dangerous and they leave a lot of vulnerability and a lot of open activity for threats, hackers, ransomware attackers. Whenever possible, don't use public Wi-Fi. So if you're in your doctor's office, you're in the coffee shop, you're going out to lunch with your friends, use your data. Nine out of 10 people today have unlimited data on their cell phones. Public Wi-Fi, it can be extremely dangerous and can be very easily hacked. So when you can, don't use public Wi-Fi. Going to cell phones and talking about Wi-Fi, let's talk about texting. There is like phishing attacks or texting, we call them smishing attacks. So in other words, you get a text and it's from a provider that you always use, or it's Amazon, or it's Netflix, or it's whomever, and they say, hey, guess what? Your package got stuck and we wanted to provide you with some information on this because you need to follow, you need to click on this link so we can help you and we'll let you know where it is now. It's stuck in Iowa. Oh, it's stuck in White Plains, New York. Don't follow these. Don't click on these. These are smishing attacks. You get a message from your utilities provider. By the end of today, your gas and electric will be cut off. We never received the last 3 payments. You need to click on this and you need to follow these prompts and you need to get to the bank right away, or you need to go to your online banking and wire us money immediately. Don't fall for these. Home phones, cell phones, we're prone to answer calls that come our way. That's just what we do. Even if you look at your cell phone and you go, I don't know anybody in Indiana, but we answer it anyways. So then we answer it, and the callers are so convincing, and they may know just a little bit of information about you, or they may know a little bit about where you live, or maybe not necessarily a family member, but something to that effect. And so then you want to help. Turn the tables on the caller. Say, I'd like to talk to your supervisor. Please give me your phone number so in case we get cut off, I'd like to be able to call you right back. I can tell you and I can assure you that not from personal experience, but from people that have explained this to me, callers will hang up immediately. Don't put yourself in a position like that. Cyber criminals, they want your information. So whether it's on Instagram or it's on TikTok or it's on Facebook, you can't believe how easily we do these things, how easily we give up information that is sensitive information or information that is not necessary to share. Now, I know many of us have done this. We go on Facebook and we're posting our pictures from our trip to Italy. Hey, we're having the best time in Italy. Okay, so now I've just told everybody that I'm in Italy. Well, who's home? You know, do I have to worry about whether I'm going to have a break-in? Because I know that Dawn is not even in the country at this moment. Medical information, super, super, super important on the black market. I gain your medical information. I change your name. I change the blood type. I use your account numbers. I can now get medical. I can now have medical procedures done. And then all of a sudden, one day you receive a bill in the mail and you have no idea what it's from. So be super careful when you're offering up any type of information. Credit cards, as we well know, it's a given. My credit card gets hacked. I call my credit card company and I cancel the card. It doesn't work that way with medical information. It doesn't necessarily work that way with driver's licenses or social security numbers. Just last week, the US federal government agencies, some, were hit by a global cyber attack by Russian criminals. What I have read about recently is they say it's not horrible. Okay, that's what we've heard so far. But no one is above this. No one is above hackers or ransomware attackers happening. And many organizations will say, I'm too small, they wouldn't come after me. Oh, I'm just one person. I live by myself. Why would they want me? They do. They want as much information as they can possibly get, and they're taking advantage of it every single day. So, as a recap, strong passwords. Passphrases, way better. The longer, the better. Look at your emails. Look at what time the email came in. Who the sender is. Are there any misspelled words in the email? Look for those red flags and look for that sense of urgency. We've got to do this right away. It has to be done by the end of the business day. Encryption, whenever possible, encrypt. Timeouts, auto locks on any kind of devices that are containing sensitive information, personally identifiable information, PII, social security numbers, health insurance cards, driver's licenses. How many times do we scan a picture and then we save it and we forget all about it? It's sitting on the desktop of our computer. It's in my cell phone. Is it necessary to be there? Is there any type of encryption enabled in that? Auto locks, timeouts, same as we discussed before. What's the big deal? You go back to your system. Oh man, I got to put my password in again. Okay. Wow, that took all of 3 seconds to do. It is such a safe and secure method. When possible, don't use public Wi-Fi. Do not use public Wi-Fi. Very, very accessible to hackers and ransomware attackers. Texts asking for action, delete. Just delete. Phone calls, same. Try to turn the tables on them. But if nothing else, can't, hang up on the person. Social media accounts, we already talked about, the frequently targeted, because so many people offer up so much confidential information. Again, think about the actions that you're taking, take a step back and say, wait a minute, is that like putting me in a position that maybe I'm offering up too much information? Maybe. Did somebody just contact me and say, I really need your social security number because I have to do X, Y, and Z? Yeah, I don't know about that. Is that necessary? You really, and these are basics. This is not rocket science, but it will save you. It will really protect your data, your information, and you won't have to worry about contacting or changing accounts or wondering whether or not you lost monies because someone hacked your accounts. So, on that happy note, any questions from the audience?
I actually have a few things that I thought of, and if people want to put anything in the chat too, I can read that off. So I have a couple questions, and actually it's funny because as you were talking, I realized that I had 3 separate incidences personally this in the last probably 6 months. So I'll share that as well if that's okay. But a couple of my questions were, so I think that like and again, you were talking about like people, just even individuals, people want access to even individuals. They don't necessarily need to look for thousands or millions of dollars, but if they can gain access to your identity or your bank accounts, they can they overdraw on bank accounts and kind of like get away with that, so to speak? So that's kind of the other part, is that it doesn't necessarily matter how much money you have in an account. They could just keep charging or spending, and it's not necessarily the limit of what's in there. Is that true?
I think so. I couldn't, I'm not a complete expert at that, Sarah, but when you think about it you pose a you make a really good point, because most of the time we say to ourselves, I'm not a millionaire. Oh, I don't have that much. Oh, they're not going to be bothered with me. Every little bit helps. In the old days of hackers, especially when it comes to business, because of what I do for Anatomy IT, hackers would get in and they would immediately encrypt data for a medical office. They would just across the board encrypt, and then they send an email and say, "Hey, pay the ransom. We'll give you back your data." Well, they don't do that anymore because they realize that once and done is not good enough. So now what we're seeing is that someone gets in, they get into Dawn's home computer, and they just sit there and they wait for Dawn to go into Wells Fargo, and they wait for Dawn to go into maybe her patient portal. Then they wait for Dawn to go into something else that's maybe her brother's account that she manages, or she's a trustee for something. So yeah, I think so. And I think they're so crafty. We try to stay one step ahead of them. We come out with new bells and whistles, antivirus, locking techniques, security devices, encryption. We have to stay conscientious and cognizant of what we're doing all the time.
Right. Well, and exactly what you just said actually pertains to my next 2 questions. So in no particular order, I'm curious about, and you probably said this, but would you mind explaining just a little bit again around auto locking devices on, so for example, if we leave a computer up and you talked about going to get coffee and 45 minutes passes and our computer's still up, people can access our computers how? If they
So,
remain up.
do you want to ask the second question, or are you good with
Oh,
that?
and the second one is just, you mentioned encryption, and you mentioned that we could purchase encryption, and I was curious if you could share if there's a particular way to do that.
Okay. So in answer to your first question, specifically in an environment where you have more than just yourself. Let's say it's not just home, but even in a home environment, you might have someone, a cleaning person. In a business environment, we want to trust all of our coworkers. We want to know that everybody is fair and everybody's honest, but we don't know. We don't know what happens behind the curtain, so to speak. And this person is knowing that they're losing their jobs, or they have an IT boyfriend that they say, look, we got to make more money here. We got to get out of this apartment, this dump that we're in. So while you're at work and Sarah is on her computer and she's doing business and she's got patient data on her computer that I might not be privy to, you need to go and you need to take a picture of that. You need to get some more information. So when you don't lock a system or a laptop, an iPad, or whatever, number one, okay, it goes back to, we'll talk about encryption in a second, but number one, it goes back to, what if you were on the train and you're coming back from the city and your cell phone or your whatever fell out of your pocket, or you had to shift things because it was really packed on the train, and now you get off the train and the train's gone and you realize you don't have your device. What if you don't have a lock, an auto lock? Well, my God, all I have to do is then open up the computer and I can have access to anything that you have on there. Spreadsheets of business information, bank statements, paychecks that I kept copies of, my kids' social security cards, just in the event that I lose them. So I don't have to have them just in paper form. There's so much information. So an auto lock in any given situation, whether it's your cell phone, whether it's your iPad, whether it's your laptop, your workstation at home, always, always good security practice.
Sure.
Especially in a business environment.
Yeah,
Now,
I guess I'm specifically thinking of myself at home on my computer. Like, if I don't have anybody that I'm worried about, a cleaning lady or anything like that, like, is there risk to somebody just being able to hack into my computer when it's just up? And
yes. Yes.
it on my Wi-Fi, not
Correct.
anything.
So
And then
you
is
brought
that
up
firewalls then?
sorry?
Is it firewalls that protect? So it's
Yes.
encryption and firewalls that protect that?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I was just going to say. So in most instances, we put in our Verizon router, our firewall, right?
Mhm.
And did we change the password? No, we left it as the factory password. So now I've got the hacker that's across the street. And guess what? Now I'm not only through your firewall, now I can just jump on your computer. So there are steps that need to be taken. I'm technical always enough to do my job for my organization. I couldn't tell you how to reset a password on a router, but I know that it's a no-brainer. I know that it is super easy to do. I think you contact your provider and you say, look, I want to change my password. And they go, okay, go ahead, get on your computer, do this. And now, you're on the internet, change it. But that's really how a lot of hackers and ransomware attackers get into organizations, even through their wireless access points, even through like the guest wireless, because it's just being broadcasted any, within a range enough for somebody outside of the environment to have access to the systems. So yes, yeah, very good point that you bring up.
Thank you for that.
In reference to your encryption, I know that in the past, now, when we talk about Windows 10 or Windows 11, if you're using a Windows 10 or Windows 11, I'm not positive if it's on a home device, but on a business device, on a Windows 10 or Windows 11, professional, they come with something called BitLocker, which is encryption, which is a software encryption tool that is embedded inside of the software. It only has to be enabled. So whether it's your IT person, whether it's your nephew or your cousin who loves to do IT, you have that device that already has that software, enable it. On Windows Home, I'm not positive if Windows 10 or Windows 11 come with BitLocker encryption. In the old days, like Windows 7, it did not. So if you wanted to purchase encryption, it was about $99 back then. Now, I can't, tell you for a fact what the cost is today, but you
Mhm.
literally, you contact the Microsoft, store or the Mac store, and you find out and you say, hey, I want to, I just want to, I listened to this woman talk about encryption. What do I have to do? What's the cost? We're
Mhm.
not talking a lot of money. And,
Mhm.
and the little bit of effort that you have to go through, or the amount that you may have to purchase, it's worth it. It is well worth it.
Okay.
I
I'm
hope I
on,
answered those questions.
yes, yes, I'm online and I just did a Google search and it mentions BitLocker, which you mentioned, the Microsoft BitLocker,
Hmm.
IBM Guardium,
Hmm.
Apple File Vault, and
Yes.
AppScript. Those were the four that popped up as that some of the best software, but not that we're promoting that, we're just giving ideas or suggestions of
Hmm.
what's out there, I guess, for you to know what names there are. So I guess along those lines too, there was another question that came up for me when you were talking about that. Oh, there was something else, and now I'm not going to think of it. But anyways, you were talking about the encryption and people having access. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me. But what I'll at least share, if it's okay with you, is just a few things that has happened to me. It was probably in the last year. I'll just share my experience so that again, I'm trained through my work to be very leery of all these things. And one was, well, I tried to buy concert tickets. So that's another big one that people will get scammed on because people will send you pictures of the concert tickets. And I was asking the person, I said, can we talk by phone? They don't want to talk by phone. I looked up the phone number that they had listed and it was a Google phone number. That's another kind of big key thing, I think, also is that because Google phone numbers are not actual
Hmm.
phone numbers. I mean, they're just tied to like the internet. They're not tied to a provider and have a person behind it necessarily. Is that accurate when I say that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so being very leery of, buying things like that online and people not being willing to, talk to you or again, like you're saying, like they, I think the big thing is not talking because we're texting and the person was like, well, I don't want to talk to, we're texting. And I was like, okay, well, then forget it. This doesn't feel right because you're not willing to like converse with me. So, and then I had my debit card, had my bank account breached. And it was funny because my son and I were kind of laughing about it because they made just a couple of small purchases, probably testing it. And we were like, those would probably be purchases that we would actually make. And so but it was in like North Carolina. So again, right away, fortunately I look often enough that I saw it and was able to call the bank right away and say I've had two purchases, or maybe they even alerted me. I don't remember now. But and then the third thing was I got a piece of mail in the mail saying that I had received, thank you for your application for your new credit card. Here's your limit. Here's all the information. And I called them and I said, I did not order a new credit card. And so, again, I think that's the other thing too is making sure you're opening your mail, making sure you're being cognizant of so many things that we think typically we'll just tear up and throw away. Oh, I don't want this credit card letter or whatever. And so, I think that everything that you shared is so incredibly helpful. And there's also these so many different ways that they seem to be coming at us. And it feels like we almost have to be a little bit hyper vigilant, but we do, that's
Absolutely.
and I thought of my other question. It was about passwords. So
And
what
I have something I want to add too about passwords, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what do you suggest for password storage? If we can't write it down, we can't put it in our phone, like, do you have a particular thing you suggest or that you use?
I don't personally. I know that you can purchase well, I wanted to say Passportal, but I'm not positive if that's actually out there for, purchase, but there are softwares that you can purchase. And literally, they're going to say, you're signing this, you're signing our contract, and we're guaranteeing you that this is safe, that this is a good, it's got an encryption level. When you connect to it, it's over a remote secure connection. We call them secure socket layers, virtual private networks, so that that you're not just, typing in, Miglino at Google or Gmail, and I'm going into my Gmail and getting that. I have to provide them with something. We talked today in this day and age, and maybe a lot of you are experiencing this as well, but two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
I know when I sign into my patient portal, I can't sign into my patient portal unless they send me a code to my phone. So again, when you're looking for some kind of a password repository, so to speak, look for something that is going to ensure that you have to take a couple of steps. You have to jump through a couple of hoops in order for that to be, and understand the level of encryption. And there should be something that the organization or the software would state, yes, we have X level of encryption. The higher level, the better. End of story. The thing that I wanted to talk about with passwords is, which I didn't really mention, is it's really good practice to change passwords. Now, there's a big controversy about that. So some organizations say, no, we don't need to change passwords all the time. It's stupid. They're going to hack them. They're going to hack us. They're going to hack us. There are other organizations that say, well, if I make my password 15 characters, which some organizations, they force you to do that now, then maybe you don't change the password, but you don't use the same password for every single secure or confidential software that you're using, that you have your own data, you have your company's data in. Don't continue to use the same password over and over and over again. Because I'll tell you this, once a hacker gets into a system, they're going to try that same password of yours in another system of yours. And it goes down the line. But changing passwords, it's a great idea. Now, if you came back to me and you said, I will never change my password is 20 characters. Once you get used to typing a password, especially a new password, it becomes common. It's not like, I don't know. I think our brains are wired differently now because everything is password protected. So I think we get used to, okay, that's okay, yep. And yes, bringing what you mentioned before, I can't really cite password repositories, but it's very good advice. Very, very good advice. I mean, I've had people that say, see this book? It has all my passwords in it. But this never goes out of my sight. Okay. Well, let's hope it doesn't get stolen.
Right, right. Exactly. It seems complicated and simple all at the same time. It's like we've got to, just do the practices and keep ourselves safe in that way, and keeping our information safe. And this has been so helpful. I'm so grateful to be able to have this conversation with you today and have you share your knowledge and expertise with us again, Don. So thank you. And did you have anything else? I'm not getting any questions. So do you have anything else you wanted to finish with?
No, I think that's it. Stay safe.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Take good care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.